Mercy is for the strong, reveals its profound truth as Captain Elena Reyes stands victorious over the defeated General Marzak. With her weapon trained on the Volcar terrorist who nearly destroyed the peace, she makes the defining choice, lowering her gun and declaring, "Mercy is not weakness. It is the luxury of the strong, the privilege of the victor." In that moment, two worlds begin to heal. The year was 2347, 3 years after the end of the Celestial War between the alliance of species and humanity. Aurora Station hung in the void like a diamond in the darkness, its massive glass domes reflecting the light of distant stars. Inside, a metropolis of interconnected chambers and platforms bustled with activity as beings from a dozen worlds went about their business. The rhythmic hum of life support systems, a constant backdrop to the cacophony of languages and mechanical sounds. Captain Elena Reyes stood at the viewport of her temporary quarters, gazing out at the stars beyond the reinforced glass dome. Her olive-skinned face reflected back at her, dark eyes intense with concentration. The blue and silver uniform of the Earth Diplomatic Corps fit her athletic frame perfectly, adorned with the combat medals she'd earned during the war, medals she sometimes wished she could forget. "Captain, the delegation is assembled," announced Lieutenant Patel from the doorway. Elena nodded without turning. "How's the mood down there?" "Tense. The Volcar representatives keep to themselves. They're not mingling with the other species." "And our people?" "Professional, but cautious. Nobody's forgotten what happened at Proxima Centauri." Neither had Elena. The massacre at the human colony had been the catalyst for 3 years of brutal warfare. Now, as humanity's military representative in the peace delegation, she had to face the architects of that slaughter across a negotiating table and somehow forge a lasting peace. "The ceasefire has held for 6 months," she reminded herself aloud. "That's something." "Yes, ma'am," Patel agreed, though his tone suggested he shared her reservations. Elena straightened her uniform and turned from the viewport. "Then let's not keep them waiting." As they walked through the curved corridors of the diplomatic section, Elena noted the increased security presence, both human and alien. Guards from at least 5 species stood at regular intervals, their postures rigid, eyes scanning constantly. The fragile peace had everyone on edge. Ambassador Chen Wei, the lead human negotiator, met them at the junction to the main concourse. His silver hair and weathered face betrayed his 70 years, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "Captain Reyes, walk with me," he said, gesturing her forward while Patel fell back respectfully. "How are you feeling about today's proceedings?" "Cautiously optimistic, sir," she replied diplomatically. Chen smiled slightly. "Save the diplomatic answers for the Volcar. I need your honest assessment." Elena hesitated before answering. "I believe they're negotiating in good faith, but there are factions, particularly among the Volcar military, who see any compromise as weakness. We need to be prepared for potential sabotage of the peace process." "My thoughts exactly," Chen nodded, "which is why your presence is crucial. The Volcar respects strength and honor in combat. Having one of our most decorated officers at the table sends a message." They turned into the central elevator that would take them to the meeting chambers on the station's upper level. As the doors closed, Chen's expression grew more serious. "There's something else you should know. We've received intelligence that General Marzak may have arrived on the station." Elena stiffened. Marzak had been the mastermind behind the Proxima Centauri attack. His tactics throughout the war had been brutal and effective, earning him both fear and respect among his own people. "Is he part of the official delegation?" "No. The current Volcar leadership considers him too extreme. He represents a splinter faction that opposes the peace process entirely." "Then why is he here?" Chen's expression darkened. "That's what concerns me." The elevator chimed as they reached the upper level. As the doors slid open, An alarm suddenly blared through the station's communication system. Red emergency lights began to pulse along the corridors. "Attention all personnel!" An automated voice announced in multiple languages. "Security breach detected in Cargo Bay Delta. All non-security personnel are advised to return to their quarters immediately." Elena and Chen exchanged glances. The timing couldn't be coincidental. "I need to get to the delegation," Chen said urgently. "Sir, with respect, you should follow station protocols and return to secure quarters. Let me—" The explosion cut her off, the concussive force throwing them both against the elevator wall. The lights flickered, then stabilized as emergency systems engaged. Through the ringing in her ears, Elena heard screams and the distinctive sound of weapons fire. "Ambassador!" she shouted, helping Chen to his feet. "Are you injured?" "I'm fine," he insisted, though blood trickled from a cut on his forehead. "The meeting chamber? Our people?" Elena's training took over. She drew her sidearm, a standard-issue plasma pistol, authorized for diplomatic security, and positioned herself between the ambassador and the direction of the explosion. "Stay behind me," she ordered, all pretense of diplomatic deference gone. She activated her comm unit. "Patel, report." Static crackled. Then, "Captain, multiple explosions near the main conference room. We have casualties and the delegation is pinned down. Security forces are responding, but it's chaos." Another explosion, closer this time, drowned out his voice. The deck beneath them shuddered. "Move!" Elena commanded, pulling Chen toward an emergency shelter marked on the station schematic embedded in the wall. "We need to get you to safety. Then I'll find our people." "No," Chen resisted. "If we abandon the talks now, everything we've worked for is lost. We must reach the conference room and show the Volcar we won't be intimidated." Elena wanted to argue, but she recognized the steel in the old diplomat's voice. He was right. Retreat now would be interpreted as weakness or, worse, complicity. "Then stay close and do exactly as I say," she conceded, leading them away from the shelter and toward the conference area. The corridor ahead was filled with smoke, emergency barriers half deployed where systems had been damaged. They encountered station security forces, a mix of humans and Talaxians, establishing a perimeter. "Captain Reyes, Earth Corps." She identified herself to the officer in charge. "Situation report?" "Multiple explosive devices detonated simultaneously," the Talaxian officer replied, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into standard English. "The conference room was targeted, but the main damage is in the adjacent corridors. We have reports of armed intruders, species unconfirmed." "The human delegation?" "Sheltering in place with most of the other representatives. The room's security protocols activated, but communications are down." Elena made a quick decision. "I need 3 of your personnel to escort Ambassador Chen to the conference room through the secondary access routes." "Captain," Chen began to protest. "Sir, I need to assess the security situation firsthand. I'll join you shortly." She turned back to the Talaxian. "And I need one of your people to show me the fastest route to where the first explosion occurred." Within moments, Chen was escorted away, and Elena followed a young Talaxian security officer through a maintenance corridor. As they moved, the station's artificial gravity fluctuated briefly, causing them to stumble. "Damage to the stabilization systems?" Elena asked. "Possibly," the officer replied. "Or it could be intentional sabotage to hamper response efforts." They emerged into a wider corridor, where the damage was more extensive. Panels had been blown from the walls, exposing circuitry and structural supports. Medical teams were already attending to injured station personnel and civilians. Elena knelt beside a fallen figure in the distinctive armor of the Volcar Elite Guard. The warrior was still alive, but badly injured, blue blood seeping from multiple wounds. "Who did this?" she asked in halting Vulcan, a language she'd studied extensively during the war. The warrior's 4 eyes focused on her with difficulty. "Betrayers," he managed before coughing violently. "Our own kind, but not our kind. A medic hurried over, and Elena stood to give them room to work. She surveyed the destruction, her military training allowing her to read the pattern of the blast. This wasn't random terrorism. The explosions had been precisely placed to cause maximum confusion while minimizing structural damage to the station itself. Whoever had planned this wanted chaos, not catastrophe. Her comm unit crackled. "Captain Reyes," came Patel's voice, clearer now. "We've secured the delegation, but the Volcar representatives are demanding answers. They're accusing us of orchestrating this to disrupt the peace talks. Tell them I'm investigating personally, and will report directly to both delegations." She replied. And Patel, "Keep an eye on the Volcar security detail. If this is the work of Marzok's faction, they may have infiltrated the official delegation." "Understood." Elena continued her inspection, stopping when something caught her eye, a fragment of metal embedded in the wall. She carefully extracted it, examining the peculiar patterns etched into its surface. "Officer," she called to the Talaxian, "are you familiar with this technology?" The security officer examined it briefly. "Ancient design. Predates unified galactic standards. It appears to be a fragment of a detonator casing, but the markings—" He hesitated. "They resemble Volcar script, but archaic. I have only seen similar artifacts in historical records." Elena pocketed the fragment. "I need to speak with someone who might recognize this. Is there a Volcar cultural attaché or historian on the station?" "Major Karan serves as both security chief and cultural liaison for the Volcar delegation," the officer replied. "He should be in the conference area now." Elena nodded her thanks and headed back toward the diplomatic section, her mind racing. If Marzok's faction was behind the attack, using ancient Volcar technology was a calculated move, a symbolic statement about returning to old ways, rejecting the modernization and cooperation that had gradually brought the Volcar into the galactic community. As she approached the conference room, she was met by Lieutenant Patel, who looked relieved to see her unharmed. "Status?" she asked briskly. "The delegates are secure, but relations have deteriorated rapidly," he reported. "The Volcar are demanding that their security forces take over the investigation, claiming humans cannot be trusted. And Ambassador Chen, attempting to maintain order, but it's deteriorating in there. The Talaxian and Nuar representatives are caught in the middle, trying to mediate." Elena straightened her uniform and checked her appearance quickly in a reflective panel. Despite the chaos, protocol mattered, especially to the Volcar, who placed enormous emphasis on presentation and dignity. "Let's go in," she said, squaring her shoulders. The conference room was a marvel of both architecture and diplomacy. A vast circular chamber with a transparent ceiling showing the stars above. It featured a round table constructed from materials donated by each member species of the galactic community. The symbolism was obvious, if optimistic. Strength through unity. Transparency in negotiations. At the moment, however, unity seemed a distant dream. The room had divided itself along species lines, with armed guards from each delegation positioned protectively behind their diplomats. The atmosphere crackled with tension. Ambassador Chen was engaged in heated discussion with Arcos, the chief Volcar diplomat, whose towering, muscular frame and steel blue skin made him an imposing figure, even by Volcar standards. Both fell silent as Elena entered. "Captain Reyes," Chen acknowledged her. "Your assessment, please." All eyes turned to her, and Elena felt the weight of the moment. Her words now could either escalate or diffuse the situation. "Preliminary evidence suggests this was a coordinated attack designed to disrupt the peace negotiations," she stated clearly, her voice carrying across the room. "The explosives used were of ancient Volcar design, predating the Celestial War." A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. Arcos's 4 eyes narrowed. "You accuse the Volcar hegemony of attacking our own delegation?" he demanded, his translator rendering his gravelly voice into crisp English. "No," Elena replied calmly. "I believe this was the work of those who oppose peace between our peoples. Possibly the same faction that has rejected the authority of the current Volcar leadership." Arcos exchanged glances with a fellow Volcar standing slightly behind him, a heavily scarred warrior whose ornate armor marked him as a high-ranking military officer. This, Elena guessed, must be Major Karan. "You speak of the purists," Karan said, stepping forward. His voice was deeper than Arcos's, his English unassisted by translation technology. "Led by General Marzak." Elena nodded. "We have intelligence suggesting Marzak may be on this station." "Impossible," Arcos declared. "He would be recognized and detained immediately." "Perhaps by your people," Chen interjected smoothly. "But there are over 30,000 beings on Aurora Station. Security cannot possibly verify the identity of every passenger and crew member." "I would like to examine the evidence you've collected," Karan requested, addressing Elena directly. She removed the fragment from her pocket and placed it on the table. This was recovered from the blast site. Karan approached and studied the piece carefully, his expression unreadable to human eyes. After a moment, he straightened. "The markings are indeed ancient Volcar script," he confirmed. "They speak of purification through fire, a philosophy embraced by the most radical elements of our society." He looked directly at Elena. "I would like to accompany you in your investigation, Captain. If Marzak is indeed behind this, no one knows his methods better than I." Elena glanced at Chen, who gave a subtle nod of approval. "I welcome your assistance, Major," she replied formally. "This changes nothing," Arcos interrupted. "Until we have conclusive proof that humans were not involved in this attack, the peace negotiations must be suspended." The Talaxian representative, a slender, feathered being named Ziv, raised a hand in the traditional gesture requesting attention. "If I may suggest, a joint investigation led by Captain Reyes and Major Karan would demonstrate the commitment of both humans and Volcar to discovering the truth. Meanwhile, technical discussions on non-controversial aspects of the treaty could continue." Silence fell as both Chen and Arcos considered the proposal. Finally, Chen spoke. "The human delegation agrees to this approach, provided that security for all parties is guaranteed." All eyes turned to Arcos, who seemed to be conducting a silent consultation with his aides. Eventually, he nodded. "The Volcar hegemony concurs, with one condition. The investigation must be concluded within 48 station hours. We will not allow these talks to be derailed indefinitely." With that, the immediate crisis seemed averted, though tension still permeated the air. As the delegates began to discuss logistics, Elena found herself face to face with Major Karan. Up close, the Volcar officer was even more imposing, standing over 7 feet tall, with skin the color of burnished steel, and 4 yellow eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on his face. He embodied the fearsome reputation of his species. The scars that crisscrossed his features told of countless battles survived. "Captain Reyes," he said, his voice pitched low for her ears only, "your reputation precedes you. The Battle of Epsilon Eridani, the Siege of New Luna. You fought with honor." Elena was taken aback by this acknowledgement from a former enemy. "As did the Volcar forces," she replied cautiously. "Some did," Karan agreed, his expression darkening. "Others, like Marzak, brought shame to our traditions. He cares nothing for honor, only victory at any cost. Then we have a common interest in finding him before he can do more damage." Karan nodded once, sharply. "We begin immediately. There are things about this station you should know, vulnerabilities that an experienced tactician like Marzak would exploit." As they left the conference room, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She glanced back once to see Arcos observing their departure, his expression unreadable to human eyes. but something in his posture suggested calculation rather than concern. The investigation began in the station's security center, where Karan used his authority to access surveillance records. The command center was a hive of activity, with station personnel from multiple species monitoring screens and coordinating repair efforts. The explosions were synchronized to disrupt power to key surveillance nodes, Karan observed, pointing to a station schematic where several sections were highlighted in red. Whoever planned this knew exactly where to strike to create blind spots. Elena studied the pattern. They were creating a corridor of darkness, she realized, from the lower cargo decks all the way to the diplomatic section. Yes, Karan agreed. A path for infiltration and escape. Can we access passenger manifests? If Marzak is here, he must have used an alias. Already requested, Karan replied. Though if he has supporters among station personnel, records could have been altered. Elena frowned, thinking, what about the fragment we found? You recognize the script. Are there experts on the station who might tell us more about its origin? There is one, Karan said after a moment's consideration. Dr. Tella, a Volcar anthropologist studying cultural artifacts from the pre-unification era. She maintains a laboratory in the academic section. They made their way through the station's winding corridors, passing repair crews and security checkpoints. Elena noticed that many of the non-human residents regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Despite the official cessation of hostilities, the wounds of war remained raw. Your people still fear us, she observed quietly. Karan glanced at her. As yours fear the Volcar. Fear is the legacy of conflict. It will not fade quickly. Yet here we are, working together. Necessity makes strange companions. Captain, do not mistake pragmatism for trust. His words stung, though Elena kept her expression neutral. Is that what peace means to the Volcar? Pragmatism without trust? Karan was silent for several steps before responding. To most, yes. After generations of isolation, followed by war, the concept of true cooperation with other species, especially humans, is foreign. And to you, what does peace mean to you, Major? His four eyes focused on her with an intensity that was almost physical. Survival, he said simply. The war weakened all our peoples. Another conflict would devastate us beyond recovery. Before Elena could respond, they arrived at Dr. Tella's laboratory. The door slid open to reveal a large, cluttered space filled with display cases and workstations. Artifacts from what Elena recognized as Volcar history, weapons, armor, scrolls, and ritual objects, were arranged in careful groupings throughout the room. Dr. Tella herself was smaller than most Volcar Elena had encountered, her blue skin lighter in tone, almost violet. Unlike the military personnel, who kept their heads shaved to accommodate battle helmets, Tella had a fringe of silver-white hair that framed her face, accentuating her four bright eyes. Major Karan, she greeted them, setting aside a tablet she'd been studying. This is unexpected. Her gaze shifted to Elena, curious but not hostile. Dr. Tella, this is Captain Reyes of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. Karan introduced them. We're investigating the recent attacks and require your expertise. Elena produced the fragment, now sealed in a transparent evidence container. We found this at one of the explosion sites. Major Karan identified it as ancient Volcar technology. But we need more specific information. Tella took the container and examined the fragment carefully, occasionally referring to data on her tablet. After several minutes, she looked up, her expression grave. This is from a ceremonial detonator used in the purification rites of the Third Dynasty, she explained. Approximately 800 Earth years ago, during one of the darkest periods of our history. The dynasty was known for its xenophobic policies and brutal suppression of dissenters. And the inscription, Karan prompted. Through cleansing fire, purity is restored, Tella translated. It was the motto of the Flame Guardians, religious zealots who believed that impurity, which to them meant any foreign influence, must be burned away to preserve the true Volcar spirit. Elena and Karan exchanged glances. The symbolism couldn't be clearer. "Doctor, how would someone acquire such artifacts today?" Elena asked. "Most surviving examples are in secure museums on the Volcar homeworld," Teller replied. "But during the chaos of the early war years, several collections were looted. The black market for cultural artifacts has thrived despite official prohibitions." "Could they be reproduced? Modern materials made to look ancient?" Tella studied the fragment again. "Possibly, but this appears authentic. The molecular degradation patterns are consistent with genuine age." She looked up at them. Whoever used this wanted to send a message steeped in historical significance. "A return to isolation, rejection of peace," Karan said grimly. "And a reminder of a time when the Volcar dealt harshly with those they considered impure," Elena added. As they thanked Dr. Tella and prepared to leave, she called them back. "There's something else you should know," the anthropologist said. Her voice lowered. "These artifacts were specifically associated with the Morvac clan, ancestors of General Marzak. Using them isn't just symbolic. It's a declaration of lineage and intent." Outside the laboratory, Elena processed this new information. "He's not hiding his involvement. He wants everyone to know." "It's consistent with Volcar warrior tradition," Karan explained as they walked. "To announce one's challenge openly is considered honorable. To strike from shadows, then claim responsibility. This shows both cunning and pride. Then he'll make his next move soon, and it will be even more public," Elena reasoned. "We need to anticipate his target." Their discussion was interrupted by an alert from Karan's communication device. He listened intently, his expression growing increasingly grim. "What is it?" Elena asked when he'd finished. "Station security has found 3 bodies in a maintenance shaft near the central hub. Volcar civilians, technicians who were working on environmental systems, executed in the traditional manner of traitors." Elena didn't ask for details. She'd seen enough of Volcar methods during the war to imagine the scene. "Marzak is eliminating potential witnesses or anyone who might have inadvertently discovered his operation," Karan continued, "and sending another message to those who would cooperate with humans." "We need to get back to the diplomatic section," Elena said urgently. "If his goal is to derail the peace process, the delegates themselves could be his ultimate target." They hurried through the station corridors, now largely emptied of civilian traffic, as security protocols kept most residents in their quarters. When they reached the diplomatic section, Elena was disturbed to find the security presence reduced from earlier. "Where are the guards?" she demanded of a lone human officer at the checkpoint. "Reassigned to hunt for the bombers, ma'am," the young officer replied. "Ambassador Chen authorized the redeployment himself. Said we needed to show trust in our Volcar counterparts by not maintaining excessive security around the negotiations." Elena exchanged a concerned look with Karan. "When was this order given?" "About an hour ago. The ambassador came through personally with the Volcar delegation." "Was I with them?" Karan asked sharply. The officer looked confused. "Yes, sir. You were right behind Ambassador Arcos." Karan's hand moved to his weapon. "I have not left Captain Reyes's side since the investigation began." Realization dawned on both of them simultaneously. "Infiltrators," Elena breathed. "Using holographic disguises or—"
Surgical modification," Karan finished grimly. "A specialty of Marzak's intelligence units during the war. We need to move, now."
They sprinted toward the conference room, Karan alerting station security through his communicator as they ran. Elena's mind raced through scenarios, none of them good. If Marzak had already penetrated the inner diplomatic circle, posing as trusted delegates or security personnel, the peace process was in imminent danger. The conference room doors were sealed when they arrived. The control panel indicating a privacy protocol was in effect. No guards were visible in the antechamber. "Override access! Security emergency!" Karan commanded, placing his palm on the scanner. The system processed his authorization, then flashed red. "Access denied? Protocol shield wall in effect?" "Shield wall?" Elena questioned. "Highest level diplomatic isolation," Karan explained tensely. "Used only when sensitive negotiations are at a critical stage. No one enters or leaves until the principals inside release the lockdown. Or until someone forces entry," Elena concluded, examining the door mechanism. These systems were designed to keep out unauthorized personnel, not withstand a determined military assault. Karan was already accessing a wall panel, revealing emergency controls. "The station's security architecture has multiple redundancies. We can trigger a priority override from auxiliary systems." As he worked, Elena's communicator activated. "Captain Reyes," came Lieutenant Patel's voice, strained and urgent. "Are you near the conference chamber?" "Just outside, attempting to gain entry. What's your status?" Trapped inside with the delegates. The Volcar security team suddenly began placing devices around the room, some kind of field generators. Ambassador Chen challenged them, and they dropped their disguises. "It's Marzok, Captain. He's taken control of the chamber and is holding everyone at gunpoint." Elena's blood ran cold. "Casualties?" "2 of our security personnel dead. 1 Talaxian diplomat wounded. Marzok has announced he'll execute a hostage every 30 minutes until his demands are met." "What demands?" "Complete human withdrawal from Aurora Station and abandonment of the peace process. He's given a 2-hour deadline." Elena turned to Karan, who had heard the exchange. "How close are you to overriding the lockdown?" "The systems are fighting me," he replied, frustration evident in his voice. "Marzok must have compromised the security protocols. I need more time." Time they didn't have. Elena studied the chamber's schematic displayed on the wall panel. "There," she pointed. "Maintenance access through the environmental control system. Can we get in that way?" Karan considered it. "Possibly, but the ducts are narrow. Even a small Volcar would struggle to navigate them." "I'm not Volcar," Elena reminded him. "Give me your sidearm and guide me through the access points. I can get inside and create a distraction while you continue working on the door override." Karan hesitated, clearly torn between military necessity and reluctance to send her alone against Marzok. "He will kill you on sight, Captain. Your face is well known to him." "Then I'll have to make sure he doesn't see me coming," Elena replied grimly. "We're out of options. Major. Those people in there, human and Volcar alike, represent our best hope for lasting peace. I won't let Marzok destroy that." After a moment's further consideration, Karan handed her his weapon, a more powerful version of her own sidearm. "The power settings are here," he demonstrated. "It is calibrated for Volcar physiology, so be aware the impact on humans would be more severe." "Noted," Elena said, checking the weapon. "Now show me the access point." Minutes later, Elena was crawling through the cramped maintenance ducts, guided by Karan's voice in her earpiece. The narrow passages were hot and filled with the hum of environmental systems. Occasionally, she passed transparent sections that allowed glimpses into various rooms and corridors. "You're approaching the conference chamber," Karan informed her. "The next junction should have a service panel overlooking the main floor." Elena moved as silently as possible, conscious that even the smallest sound might carry in the quiet chamber below. When she reached the panel, she carefully positioned herself to peer through without being seen. The scene below confirmed her worst fears. At least 10 Volcar commandos in full combat gear stood at strategic points around the room. The delegates, human, Volcar, Talaxian, and Nuar, were grouped together at the center, under guard. 2 human security officers lay motionless near the main entrance. And there, standing on the raised dais, where the chief negotiators normally sat, was General Marzok himself. Elena had seen images of him during intelligence briefings, but the reality was more imposing. Taller than even Karan, with midnight blue skin and eyes that gleamed with fanatical intensity. He cut an intimidating figure in his ceremonial battle armor. A long scar ran from his right temple down to his jaw, a souvenir from some past battle. "Your time is running out, Ambassador," Marzak was saying to Chen, his voice carrying clearly in the hushed room. 73 minutes remain before I execute the first hostage. Will you contact your government and relay my terms?" Chen stood straight, his dignity intact despite the circumstances. "I have conveyed your demands, General. But you must understand that even if I were to recommend compliance, the withdrawal of all human personnel from this station would take days, not hours. Then perhaps a demonstration of my resolve is required sooner rather than later." Marzak replied coldly, gesturing to one of his soldiers. The commando roughly grabbed a Talaxian delegate, dragging the terrified being forward. Elena knew she had to act quickly. She whispered into her communicator, "I have visual confirmation of the situation. Approximately 10 hostiles, heavily armed. Marzak is preparing to execute a hostage." "The override is nearly complete," Karan responded. 2 minutes more. Can you create a distraction without revealing your position?" Elena scanned the room, noting the position of each guard and the complex light fixtures that hung from the ceiling. An idea formed. "Yes, but timing will be critical. When you hear the commotion, force the doors immediately." Using the edge of Karan's weapon, she carefully loosened the service panel, creating just enough space to aim. Then, taking careful aim at the main lighting control junction, visible on the far wall, she fired. The plasma bolt struck perfectly, causing a cascade of electrical failures. The chamber was plunged into darkness, emergency lights flickering on a moment later to cast the room in an eerie red glow. In the confusion, Elena kicked the service panel free and dropped into the room, landing behind a decorative column. Marzak's commandos were reacting with military precision despite the surprise, forming a defensive perimeter around their leader and the hostages. Elena used the momentary chaos to pick off 2 guards with well-placed shots, then rolled to new cover as return fire scorched the column where she'd been. "Intruder!" a Volcar voice shouted. "Northeast quadrant!" Elena was already moving, staying low and using the room's furniture for cover. She needed to draw attention away from the hostages and toward the outer doors, where Karan would soon make his entry. "Human cowardice," Marzak's voice boomed through the chamber. "Attacking from shadows when we hold all the advantages. Show yourself, assassin!" Instead, Elena fired again, this time at the environmental controls near the ceiling. Steam burst from ruptured conduits, further obscuring visibility and adding to the confusion. Through the haze, she caught a glimpse of Ambassador Chen, guiding the other delegates toward cover beneath the massive conference table. The main doors exploded inward in a shower of metal and sparks. Karan led a contingent of station security forces into the chamber, their weapons finding targets with remarkable accuracy. 3 of Marzak's commandos fell in the first volley. "Protect the hostages!" Karan shouted, as his team engaged the remaining Volcar insurgents. Elena used the distraction to work her way closer to Marzak, who had retreated to a defensible position on the dais. He was remarkably calm amid the chaos, directing his forces with the confidence of a seasoned commander. When he spotted Elena moving between columns, his 4 eyes narrowed in recognition. "Captain Reyes," he called out, his voice cutting through the din of battle. "I should have anticipated your involvement. Come to die for your precious peace." "To defend it," Elena corrected, ducking as plasma fire strafed the wall above her. "Something a true warrior would understand." Marzak laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "You presume to lecture me on the warrior's path? Humans know nothing of honor. You speak of peace while preparing for the next conquest. As opposed to murdering unarmed diplomats? Elena retorted, trying to keep him talking while she assessed her options. Most of his commandos were now engaged with Karan's forces, but Marzak himself remained a formidable opponent, armed with both a plasma rifle and what appeared to be a traditional Volkar blade at his hip. Their deaths would serve a greater purpose, Marzak replied. The awakening of my people to the threat your kind represents. The Volkar ruled the stars before humans crawled from their caves. We will do so again. Elena caught movement from the corner of her eye. Ambassador Chen and Arcos were leading the other delegates toward the exit, while Karan's forces provided cover. Only a few more moments, and they would be safe. Your time is past, General, she called out, rising from cover just enough to draw his attention. Even your own people have rejected your vision. Marzak snarled and fired, the plasma bolt sizzling past Elena's head as she ducked back. Weaklings and collaborators. They will remember their pride when human boots march on Volkar soil. With the hostages nearly clear, Elena decided to force the confrontation. She activated her communicator. Karan, status on the delegates? Almost clear, came the response. Arcos is leading them to the secure area. We're holding the insurgents at bay. Focus on getting everyone out. I'll deal with Marzak. Before Karan could protest, Elena disabled her communicator and took a deep breath. Then, calculating the angles, she fired 3 rapid shots at the fixtures above Marzak's position. The ceiling panels collapsed, showering the general with debris. As he staggered, momentarily disoriented, Elena broke from cover and charged. Marzak recovered more quickly than she'd anticipated. Discarding his rifle, he drew his blade, a wicked curve of dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. He met her charge with a powerful swing that would have decapitated her had she not slid beneath it at the last moment. Elena rolled to her feet, firing as she rose, but Marzak was already moving. He closed the distance with frightening speed, his blade whistling through the air. Elena barely managed to deflect it with Karan's sidearm, the impact numbing her arm. I expected better from the Butcher of New Luna, Marzak taunted, pressing his advantage as they circled each other on the dais. Or do you only excel at killing from orbit? The nickname, a Volkar propaganda creation based on her role in the orbital defense of the colony, stung more than Elena cared to admit. That title belongs to your imagination, General. I've never targeted civilians, unlike some. Marzak's blade flashed again, opening a shallow cut on Elena's forearm as she twisted away. War recognizes no such distinctions. Captain, there are only victors and vanquished. They exchanged a furious series of attacks and counters. Elena using her smaller size and greater agility to avoid Marzak's powerful but slower strikes. The general was a masterful combatant, his centuries of experience evident in every movement. But Elena had survived the war by learning to adapt to the Volkar fighting style, finding weaknesses in their traditional forms. The battle around them was winding down. Most of Marzak's commandos had been neutralized, and station security was securing the perimeter. Karan reappeared at the chamber entrance, weapon raised. Surrender, Marzak, he called out. Your insurrection has failed. Marzak's eyes never left Elena as he responded, The Volkar do not surrender, traitor. We conquer or we die. With that, he launched a renewed assault on Elena, his blade moving almost too fast to track. She felt it slice through her uniform tunic, barely missing flesh. As she stumbled back, her heel caught on debris, and she fell hard onto her back. Marzak loomed over her, blade raised for the killing stroke. Thus ends the human piece, he declared. Elena rolled as the blade came down, the weapon embedding itself in the floor where she had been. Before Marzak could wrench it free, she kicked upward, catching him under his jaw. The general staggered back, momentarily stunned. In that instant, Elena saw her opening. She lunged forward, tackling Marzak with all her strength. His greater mass meant he barely moved. But the unexpected tactic threw him off balance. They grappled briefly before tumbling off the dais onto the main floor. Elena lost her grip on Karan's weapon in the fall, and Marzok's blade had remained stuck in the dais. The fight became hand-to-hand. Marzok's superior strength against Elena's combat training and desperation. With a powerful move, Marzok pinned Elena to the floor, his hands around her throat. "Embrace the honor of death by combat, human," he growled, tightening his grip. Elena's vision began to darken as she struggled for air. Her hands frantically searched the floor around her, seeking anything that might serve as a weapon. Her fingers closed around a shard of metal, debris from the earlier explosion. With the last of her strength, she drove the shard into Marzok's side, finding a gap in his armor. The general roared in pain, his grip loosening just enough for Elena to break free. She rolled away, gasping for breath, as Marzok staggered to his feet, blue blood seeping from the wound. Rather than press her advantage, Elena retreated, putting space between them as she recovered her breath. Marzok, breathing heavily, reached up to the dais and wrenched his blade free with a single powerful motion. "Now we finish this," he snarled, advancing on her. Elena spotted Karan's weapon lying several meters away and dove for it, rolling into position and taking aim in one fluid motion. Marzok raised his blade, prepared to charge despite the weapon trained on him. "Do it," he challenged. "Prove what humans truly value, not peace but dominance through superior firepower." Elena's finger tensed on the trigger. One shot would end Marzok's threat forever. Justice for the civilians at Proxima Centauri. Security for the peace process. Everything in her military training screamed for her to take the shot. But something held her back. The image of delegates, human and alien alike, working together despite centuries of mistrust. The vision of a future where such conflicts were resolved through negotiation rather than bloodshed. This moment, she realized, would define not just the peace process, but the nature of human-Volcar relations for generations to come. Slowly, deliberately, Elena lowered her weapon. "What is this?" Marzok demanded, suspicion evident in his voice. "Some human trick?" "No trick, General," Elena replied, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "A choice. The same choice our peoples face now, whether to perpetuate the cycle of violence or break it." "Weakness," Marzok spat. "You had your victory and discarded it." "Mercy is not weakness, General Marzok," Elena said, rising to her feet but keeping her weapon lowered. "Mercy is the luxury of the strong, the privilege of the victor. I choose not to kill you, not because I cannot, but because there has been enough death." Marzok stared at her, confusion warring with rage in his four eyes. "You would risk everything on this philosophy?" "I would build peace on it," Elena corrected him. "A peace where both our peoples can retain their pride and their traditions without the need to destroy each other." For a long moment, the chamber was silent, save for the distant sounds of emergency systems and the injured being treated. Marzok's expression was unreadable to human eyes, but his posture remained tense, his blade still raised. Then, movement caught Elena's attention. Around the perimeter of the room, the surviving members of both delegations had returned, led by Ambassador Chen and Arcos. They stood in silence, witnesses to this pivotal moment. Arcos stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Marzok. "The Council of Elders stripped you of rank and clan, Marzok, but still you cling to the past. Look now upon the future, a human warrior with the power to end your life, choosing restraint instead. Which demonstrates true strength?" Marzok's gaze darted between Elena and Arcos, his grip on his blade tightening. For a heartbeat, Elena thought he might attack regardless of the consequences. Then, with a sound of disgust, he lowered his weapon. "I will not surrender," he declared, his voice hard. "Nor would we expect it," Arcos replied. You will stand trial before the combined council, Volcar and human together, to answer for your actions. But you will do so as a warrior, not a fugitive. Station security moved in cautiously. Weapons trained on Marzak. The general stood rigid, his expression carved from stone, as they secured his blade and bound his hands with energy restraints. As they led him away, he paused beside Elena. "This mercy of yours," he said quietly, his voice carrying only to her ears. "I do not understand it." "Perhaps someday you will," she replied. After Marzak was gone, the chamber slowly returned to order. Medical teams attended to the injured, while security processed the surviving insurgents. Elena found herself approached by both Chen and Arcos. "Captain," Chen began, his expression a mixture of relief and admiration. "Your actions today were reckless," Arcos interrupted, though without rancor, "and unexpected." His 4 eyes studied her with newfound intensity. The Volcar have a saying, "In the moment of triumph, the warrior reveals their true nature." Today, you have given us much to consider. Elena inclined her head respectfully. As have you, Ambassador. Your people's commitment to justice rather than vengeance speaks volumes. Perhaps, Arcos acknowledged, there is hope for this peace of yours after all. With that, he turned and rejoined the Volcar delegation. Chen watched him go, then turned back to Elena. "That was quite a gamble, Captain." "Was it?" Elena questioned. "Or was it the only move that made sense? Killing Marzak would have made him a martyr to those who share his views. This way, he faces justice, and we demonstrate our commitment to the principles we're negotiating." Chen smiled slightly. "You might have missed your calling as a diplomat." "I prefer action to words, Ambassador," Elena replied, suddenly aware of her exhaustion and injuries. "Speaking of which, I believe I'm due for a visit to medical—" "Of course. But, Captain," Chen added as she turned to leave, "what you did today, that moment of mercy, may well be remembered long after the formal treaties are signed and forgotten." 3 days later, Aurora Station had returned to something resembling normalcy. Repairs to the damaged sections were underway, and the peace negotiations had resumed with renewed purpose. The attempted coup, rather than derailing the process, had somehow strengthened the resolve of both parties to reach agreement. Elena stood once again at the viewport in her quarters, watching as shuttles and ships moved in their choreographed dance against the backdrop of stars. Her injuries had been minor, a few cuts and bruises, nothing that regenerative therapy couldn't address quickly. The door chimed, and she turned. "Enter!" To her surprise, it was Major Karan who stepped into the room. He was dressed in formal Volcar diplomatic attire, rather than his military uniform. "Captain Reyes," he greeted her, with a respectful inclination of his head. "I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all, Major, or should I say Ambassador?" She gestured to his formal attire. "Not yet," Karan replied. "But the Council has appointed me to the Permanent Diplomatic Corps. It seems my experience working with humans is now considered valuable." "Congratulations," Elena said sincerely. "That's excellent news." Karan moved to stand beside her at the viewport, his tall frame casting a shadow across the floor. For a moment, they stood in companionable silence, watching the activity outside. "The treaty will be signed tomorrow," he said finally. "All major points have been resolved." "So I heard, a historic achievement?" Karan turned to face her. "There is another matter I wish to discuss. The Council has created a new award, to be presented to individuals who demonstrate exceptional courage in the cause of peace. They have named it the Mercy Blade, a deliberate paradox in our language." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Interesting choice." "They wish you to be its first recipient," Karan continued. "Your actions regarding Marzak have challenged many assumptions among my people. Some now question whether strength and mercy are truly opposed, as our traditions have long held. "And what do you think, Major?" Elena asked. Karan considered the question carefully before answering. "I think that true strength lies in having choices. In war, we often have few. In peace, we must learn to navigate many." He paused. "It is a more complex path, but perhaps a worthier one." Elena smiled. "That sounds like wisdom rather than mere pragmatism." "Perhaps they are not so different," Karan suggested. "Will you accept the honor?" "Of course," Elena replied. "I'm humbled by the gesture." Karan nodded, seemingly satisfied. "There is one other matter. The Interspecies Security Council is forming a joint task force to address threats to the new peace. Given your unique approach to conflict resolution, your name has been proposed to represent human interests." Elena's surprise must have shown on her face, for Karan added, "It was Ambassador Arcos who suggested it. He believes someone who understands both combat and restraint would be ideal." The offer was unexpected, but intriguing. After years of war, the prospect of building something rather than destroying it held undeniable appeal. "I'd need to consult with my superiors," she said carefully. "But I'm certainly interested." "Excellent," Karan replied. "The first mission would likely take us to the Outer Rim territories, where elements sympathetic to Marzok's cause may be regrouping." "Us?" Elena questioned. "I will be the Volcar representative," Karan explained, a hint of what might have been amusement in his voice. "It seems our working relationship has been deemed effective." Before Elena could respond, her communicator chimed with an urgent alert. She activated it to find Lieutenant Patel's concerned face. "Captain, we're receiving a strange transmission from the Galactic Rim," he reported. "It's on all frequencies, but the source is untraceable. The message is repeating in multiple languages, including Standard English." "What does it say?" Elena asked, exchanging glances with Karan. "Just 3 words, Captain, prepare for judgment." A chill ran down Elena's spine as she looked back out at the stars. Beyond the safety of Aurora Station, beyond the newly secured peace between humans and Volcar, something waited in the darkness between worlds. Something that might soon test whether their fragile alliance could withstand a greater threat than their own ancient hatreds. "It seems," Karan observed quietly, "that the universe has a sense of timing." "Or irony," Elena agreed. She straightened her shoulders. "Decision made. Tell Ambassador Chen I accept the Security Council appointment, effective immediately, and inform Station Command we'll need a long-range vessel prepared for departure to the Outer Rim." As Karan moved to leave, Elena caught his arm. "Major, do you think our peoples are ready to face something unknown together?" Karan considered the question, his 4 eyes reflecting the starlight from the viewport. "No," he said finally. "But perhaps that is why we must try. The strongest alliances are forged in adversity, not comfort." With that, he departed, leaving Elena alone with the stars and the weight of new responsibilities. Beyond the glass, Aurora Station continued its eternal orbit, a bright point of light in the darkness, a symbol of what could be built when ancient enemies chose a different path. "Mercy is for the strong," Elena murmured to herself. The words no longer just a philosophy, but a commitment. Whatever waited at the edge of known space, she would face it, not just as a warrior, but as something more, a builder of bridges between worlds. Out among the stars, the message continued to echo across the void. Prepare for judgment. But for the first time in generations, humanity would not face that judgment alone.